Good Thursday morning to you. Thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Michelle Beck. If you haven't been outside this morning, brace yourself. We have some dangerously cold temperatures this morning, a big change from when you went to bed last night. Audrey Russo is here this morning with some things to remember when it gets this cold.
Of course, those reminders are critical, especially because this morning around 4 o'clock, we heard our first frostbite call come in over the emergency scanner. So it's important to remember that frostbite can set in just a matter of minutes. That's maybe, a wait at the bus stop, a walk with your dog, when you're bundling up your kids. It's important to remember that it does not take very long for those symptoms to present. And when it comes to frostbite, of course, it can set in anytime the temperatures dip below freezing. But doctors with Hennepin Healthcare actually tell us that this first bitterly cold day of the year is when they expect to see the biggest influx of frostbite patients. So you want to remind yourself of the symptoms. It's important to keep an eye out for changes to the skin, the coloration of the skin. It could get a little bit red, it could get a little bit white, stiffness, blistering, aches, numbness, all of those are symptoms of frostbite. And if you think you're starting to get some of those, it's important to remember that you need to warm yourself back up slowly. Don't just plunge your hands into hot water or put them near the fireplace, because you can't feel how hot your skin is getting, and you could get further tissue and skin damage that way. Now, when it comes to who's most at risk, of course, doctors with Hennepin Healthcare tell us that it's those vulnerable populations who can't reliably get indoors, the unhoused population. I actually reached out to 2 homeless shelters, and they tell me during these past overnight hours they had no space in their shelters. Back to you.
Another reminder, the temps may be dropping, but the DNR says the ice isn't safe. In fact, it never really is. But a general guideline is this, posted on this chart. You need 4 inches for walking, 5 to 7 for snowmobiles, between 9 and 17 inches for cars and trucks, and more than 20 for ice houses. We are nowhere near any of those numbers.
We're kind of in the prime danger area right now, where the ice is wildly inconsistent everywhere, and people are going to start pushing the boundaries a little bit more.
The DNR says if you do go out on the ice, make sure you have all the right equipment in case you fall through. Ice picks can help pull you up, or a float coat. Developing this morning, the Department of Homeland Security says ICE is in Minneapolis to remove people who are here illegally. Those operations prompting a new executive order from Mayor Jacob Frey shielding property that's owned by the city. That's parking lots, ramps, or garages. Minneapolis city leaders now saying immigration enforcement cannot happen there. Community members reported seeing ICE agents across multiple sites in Minneapolis yesterday. Here's one video shared with us, a man being taken into the back of an unmarked car near Lake Street. And back to that executive order, if there are any violations, city employees are required to report them. The police chief, however, says officers cannot get in the way of federal agents.
It would be unlawful for us to obstruct federal law enforcement enforcing federal law. For me, the most difficult part of living through this is being here with people in the community and seeing just how terrified people are, and it's very disturbing.
And now the city is making signs for private property owners to use. This is something they can choose to put up. It would restrict immigration enforcement from happening on their property. Meanwhile, DFL elected officials and community leaders are coming together to condemn the operation.
They are throwing the full weight of the federal government against a tiny population of people, maybe 80,000 in Minnesota.
DFL members say they reached out to their Republican counterparts but got no response. In a statement, House GOP leadership saying in part, quote, "No matter your country of origin, if you are here illegally, the law says you must be removed." We're also hearing new perspective from a college freshman at the U of M about the impact of President Trump's words and the attention from ICE. Bushra Mohammed is 18 years old and was born in the U.S. Despite being a U.S. citizen, she says she can't help but to feel nervous that ICE agents may approach her. She says President Trump has created a distrust of law enforcement with this immigration detail. She says his hurtful comments have caused real harm for the Somali community.
I think there's a lot of fear right now and a lot of confusion, because it has been said multiple times that a lot of us are United States citizens. So the elders in our community are confused, and they're scared for their children, and they just want some type of hope and understanding of the situation.
Bushra says she has felt support at the U of M and from local elected leaders. A Hamline University hockey player has now been charged in a September assault in Dinkytown. Charging documents say a witness passed by Tanner Rausch yelling at another man and later turned back to see that man bleeding on the ground. Police say security footage shows Rausch punching the victim 3 times before someone else pulls him away. Charges say the victim had several face fractures and vision loss. Rausch is due in court later this month. A look from D.C. this morning, where today the so-called Signal Gate report will be released. The 8-month investigation looked into Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's use of Signal, that's an encrypted but unclassified messaging app. According to NBC News, that report concluded Hegseth could have put troops in danger before an attack. Also in D.C. today, a hearing on a controversial U.S. airstrike on an alleged drug boat in the Caribbean. NBC's Tracy Wilkins joins us with more.
Senate and House Armed Services and Intelligence Committees will hold a classified briefing today. The committee's focus: was a war crime committed, and if so, who's to blame? What happened when and who saw what? Senate and House committees are expected to ask questions today that will paint a clearer picture for a timeline of that September 2nd U.S. airstrike of a boat in the Caribbean near Venezuela. The White House says suspected drug smugglers were on board. Now there is bipartisan backlash over a second strike that's believed to have killed apparent survivors of the first one.
So to be clear, you support the decision to kill survivors after the initial
No, I
strike?
support the decision to knock out the boats, and whoever's piloting those boats, most of them are gone, but whoever are piloting those boats, they're guilty of trying to kill people in our country.
The Trump administration maintains the boats were suspected of smuggling drugs, although it has offered no proof.
Hegseth has to be held responsible for issuing the order that led to not only the killing of these 2 survivors of the shipwreck against international law and possibly a war crime.
There's more backlash for Hegseth as a new internal investigation finds that he may have put troops at risk when he shared information about war plans on a Signal group chat. Some Republican lawmakers see all of this as a continued attack on Trump's Secretary of Defense.
I think that this is just an ongoing effort. It started with the confirmation battle. He was their #1 target.
Democratic Senator Mark Kelly, who sits on the Armed Services Committee and viewed the classified Signal Gate report, told reporters that Hegseth's actions put pilots at risk and should have resulted in his firing. Now back to that September 2nd boat strike. There are now calls for the Trump administration to release video of the second airstrike. The president says he will release whatever they have. The White House is standing by both Hegseth and Bradley, saying they were operating within their authority. In Washington, I'm Tracy Wilkins. Back to you.
1 year ago today, United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was shot and killed in New York City. The Minnesota native was walking to an investors conference when Luigi Mangione allegedly shot him from behind. All this week, Mangione's been in a New York courtroom trying to get some key evidence in his case tossed out. That includes statements he allegedly made to police officers and items taken from his backpack, like a gun and a notebook. Prosecutors say the gun matches the firearm used in the killing, and the writings in the notebook laid out Mangione's anger against the healthcare industry. 4 men, including 2 brothers, are facing charges this morning after a shooting in St. Paul. On Monday night, 4 people were shot near the Dairy Queen on Earl Street in the Dayton's Bluff neighborhood. According to the criminal complaint, all 4 of these men were involved in the shooting and were also victims of the shooting. The complaint says at least 3 of them were not allowed to have a gun but had one anyway. It's still unclear what exactly led up to the shooting. Check this out, an unlikely sight in Duluth. Yesterday, a mountain lion spotted in town, forcing some schools to keep all staff and students inside. Police say the Minnesota DNR was aware of the animal and that it likely wandered in from another state.
It was amazing that we actually had a mountain lion in town, and that it popped up on my cell phone was a little alarming at first, and I was like, kind of thought it was cool.
The schools eventually got the all clear. Now officials are reminding people, if you see a mountain lion, stay far away. Stick with us, more news and weather coming up after the break.